This is the Easy Betting Show. My name is Easy, and we are back talking about the NFL. This will be my week 2 picks, and I got a bunch of them for this week, so I'm really excited about the week. So let's go on ahead and go through the slate. But before I do that, I'm going to quickly talk about the units that we made in week 1 and go over everything that happened there real quick. So let me get rid of that real quick. There we go. Yeah. So as you can see, record not great, 27-31, which I know is a ton of bets for 1 week of the NFL. I put a lot of bets in. This also includes first touchdowns, which is why it's kind of wonky. It also includes parlays. It also includes the Thursday night game, Monday night game, the entirety of the week. So everything in there, 27-31, but up 7.89 units on the week, which is a great start to the NFL season. A lot of that is because of the 4-leg anytime touchdown parlay that I hit on Sunday, which was awesome. It was a great hit, so that obviously helped out a lot. Didn't get any of the first touchdown bets in week 1. Also didn't Thursday for this week. So hopefully that changes. I might have to change my process for that right now because it seems like it's just a bunch of chalk. But yeah, great start to the NFL season. Hopefully we can keep that pace and keep going with that. That being said, let's go on ahead and get into the week 2 bets. I'm going to go through these a little bit differently than I did last week. I went over all of my player props first, and then I did touchdowns and things like that. This time I'm going to go by game. So it's going to be the player props and the touchdowns that I like consecutively within that game, just to keep it a little bit more put together. And then I'll do my parlays at the end like I always do there. So it's going to be a little bit different, but not much. Also, I don't have any graphics for this one either, just because I was running behind this week. That will change. I will have some graphics to put up hopefully next week. So it's a little bit easier to keep pace with everything. But being that I don't really bet lines and it's mainly just player props, it makes it a little bit easier to follow anyway. So let's go on ahead and get into it. The first game that I'm going to talk about is the Saints and Cowboys. Like I said, I'm not really going to talk about the lines much at all, except for games that I'm actually betting the line in, because it's just a waste of time if I'm not going to put the bet in myself. So I'm just talking about the plays that I like for this slate. Saints and at Cowboys. I like Alvin Kamara over 29.5 receiving yards. That's minus 113. I'm putting 1.2 units on that. He had 5 receptions last week for 27 yards, but it was a blowout. So he didn't get nearly as many attempts as he could have had towards the end of the game. And I think he gets just as many looks on both design plays and checkdowns in this game going against the Cowboys, but he's going to have a full game to clear the number this week. So the chances of being hooked again for the second week on this probably isn't as good as it potentially could be, because this definitely isn't going to be a blowout. They're going to have to use him the entirety of the game, and they love using him in the passing game. So 29.5 receiving yards just seems too low there. The other one that I have in this game is CeeDee Lamb anytime touchdown. That's minus 130. I'm putting 1.3 units on that one. He didn't score last week, but he still had 5 receptions for 61 yards. He led the team in both. Obviously, he's our number 1 receiver. Makes sense that he would lead the team in both receiving and receptions. He also had 10 targets, which seems to kind of be the pace that he's normally at. But the Cowboys did run the ball a lot in the second half because of the score. So he didn't really get as many opportunities to score as he potentially would in a quote unquote real game. So I think he's got a lot more chances in this one. I don't think this is going to be a blowout like it was last week. Or although last week wasn't really a blowout, it was just one of those weird games where you knew the Browns weren't going to do anything, so the Cowboys kept running it. So I don't think that's going to be quite like that this week. But even if it is, I still think they feed CeeDee Lamb early to get him into the end zone. The next game that I have is the Browns at Jaguars. I only have one play for this one. Gabe Davis over 32.5 receiving yards. That's minus 128. So I'm putting 1.3 units on that. I know it's a little bit more juice than the typical bets that I put out, but I just really like this play. He only had 3 receptions last week, but for 62 yards. And this Browns defense, I don't think is great in the secondary, so he should be able to get those decently long catches again. But I also think he could see more targets this week as well. I don't think the run game is going to be as prominent as it was last week against the Dolphins. So I think he's going to be used a lot more in this game, and he has the same chances of averaging the yards that he had on his catches with more catches. So I think 32.5 is way too low for him. And I think in future weeks, we're going to see this number go up a lot. Next game that I'm talking about, the 49ers at the Vikings. The first one I have is Jordan Mason over 69.5 rushing yards. That's minus 115. So I'm putting 1.2 units on that one. This is a pretty chalky play. A lot of people are on this, but for good reason. McCaffrey's out again this week, so Jordan Mason's probably going to be your main running game here. He had 147 yards last week, and I think this is a potential to have another good game. The rushing game is a big part of the 49ers offense normally in general. So I don't think he's going to get the 28 carries that he had last week, obviously, because this probably isn't going to be a blowout as much as it was last week. So they're going to have to throw a little bit more. But even in a regular game, I still think he's probably going to see close to like 18. And if he's getting 150 on 28 carries, there's no reason to think he can't get 70 on 18 carries. So another play that I really like. And then the second play that I have in this game is Deebo Samuel anytime touchdown. That's plus 105 for a unit. We cashed this last week. I'm going back to it again this week, and pretty much for the same reasons. No McCaffrey. They always love to get Deebo involved, especially in the red zone. He loves to be the guy to score, obviously. I mean, everyone does, but Deebo just kind of seems to like almost do things poorly when it's not his turn to score, so it can be his turn to score on the next play. I don't know. And it may just look like that, but it definitely looked like that last week. And with McCaffrey out and Jordan Mason still a rookie, I'm sure they trust Deebo to score more than Jordan Mason in the red zone, especially if it's a closer game. So I think, on top of his regular just passing game attempts, they could also do another end around or something like that, like they had him do last week to get in the end zone. The next game that I'm going over is the Raiders at the Ravens. And I actually have a few in this one because there was a bunch that I liked. For starters, I'm betting Ravens minus 8.5, minus 115. So I'm putting 1.2 units on that one. And this is another really chalky play that a lot of people love, but I had to be on it too. I know it's a very heavy public bet, but the Raiders looked bad last week. And on top of that, the Ravens are probably going to come into this game pissed because they should have won that game or at least tied it and, had a chance to win it last week. But half of an inch of Likely's foot was out of bounds and it cost them the game. So now they're going to be at home against a bad team, and they're absolutely going to try to win this game early. And I don't think the Raiders have anything on defense to stop this offense. I think the Ravens just roll here. The player prop that I like in this one is Justice Hill over 12.5 receiving yards. That's minus 113, so I have 1.2 units on that one. He was good in the passing game last week. He had 6 receptions on 8 targets for 52 yards. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't have a similar game like that this week. Of course, they could be up by a lot and then they just run the ball late in the game. But 12.5 receiving yards, he can get that in one play early and then be good after that. So even if this is only a first half potential, he'll probably have at least 2 design plays for him early in the game and should be able to clear this easily. And then the last one that I have in this one is Isaiah Likely anytime touchdown. It's plus 260, so I'm putting half a unit on that. I don't understand why this is still such high odds. Plus 260 seems crazy to me when he not only scored last week, but should have scored twice last week. But again, he barely stepped out of bounds to annul the second touchdown. Now, obviously, Derrick Henry is probably the obvious choice here, but his odds are minus 175. And to me, Likely and Derrick Henry probably have about the same chances of getting in the end zone. The only reason I can think of why his odds are plus 260 is that the books think that the Ravens are going to try to get Mark Andrews a little bit more involved in this one, which is entirely possible. But even if they do get Mark Andrews involved, Isaiah Likely seems to be Lamar's guy, especially in the red zone. So I think regardless, Isaiah Likely is going to at least have a couple chances to get in the end zone. I mean, he had 9 catches on 12 targets for 111 yards last week. That's not just going to disappear. It doesn't matter who you're trying to get involved. He's going to have chances. Also, his receiving yards are only 39.5, so I'm going to take that too and put 1.2 units on that one as well. Because, again, 40 yards when he just came off a 111-yard game is just nuts. I don't care if you think Mark Andrews is going to take his yards or not. He's still probably going to get 40 in the first half because, again, this could just be a first half game. All right, going to the next game, Colts at Packers. This one seems pretty easy to me. I know that they're saying Jordan Love could play, but to me, that's just absolutely nuts. I don't see any world where he actually plays in this game. But the 2 plays that I have, it doesn't matter if he plays or not, because I'm fading the Packers rushing game in this one. First one I have is Anthony Richardson over 39.5 rushing yards, minus 113, 1.2 units. The Packers defense didn't show anything that makes you think they can stop the run last week. They let Saquon go for over 100 yards. They let Jalen Hurts run for 33 yards. And you know Richardson's going to look to run the ball because that's really all he can do for the most part. I mean, he did have some good throws last week. Well, not good throws necessarily last week. Alec Pierce caught some good passes last week. So I think this is going to be a run-heavy game for the Colts. And Anthony Richardson is going to have his opportunities. I mean, he had 6 runs last week. There's no reason to think he doesn't have at least 6 this week. And he got 56 yards on those 6 runs last week against the Texans defensive line, which is substantially better than the Packers, or at least it was week 1. So he should easily clear this number. The next one that I have is sticking with the run game for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, anytime touchdown, plus 115, 1 unit on that one. I was surprised this was plus odds. I really didn't think it would be. I thought it'd be minus 120, minus 130, like a lot of the running back odds that you see this week. But for whatever reason, you're getting plus odds for him. He scored last week, even though he didn't have a ton of yards. I believe it was right around 50. But I think he'll have a few good chances to score in this game. He's probably going to be the inside the 10-yard line guy for the Colts. So even if the passing game is working for them, and it absolutely could be, because if Jordan Love actually doesn't play, I don't trust Will Levis. So I think the Packers defense is going to be out there a lot. And obviously that's going to tire him out. And I think that impacts this game a lot. So yeah. And not only am I betting his anytime touchdown, I'm going to sprinkle his 2+ touchdowns at plus 752. I think that's great odds for a guy that could potentially get into the end zone twice, just kind of cleaning up the drive. Next game that I'm going to go over is the Jets at the Titans. And this is 2 plays on the same guy. Garrett Wilson over 69.5 receiving yards at minus 113, 1.2 units on that one. Caleb Williams looked really bad last week, so you couldn't really get a feel for how the Titans defense was for the most part. But I don't really think it matters because kind of like the Ravens game, I think Aaron Rodgers is also going to kind of come out into this game pissed, and I think he's going to start slinging it. That was an ugly loss on Monday night, and that's not one that Rodgers typically has had in his career. And in the ones that he has, the next games have been pretty Aaron Rodgers-y. So I think this is going to be another one of those games. And Garrett Wilson's clearly the wide receiver 1, so he should get a lot of targets. He had a lot of targets last week in the loss. And he'll probably get a deep pass or 2 as well, which could, get him these yards or close to these yards in one play. And then the other one that I have for this game is Garrett Wilson anytime touchdown. That's plus 165. So I'm going to throw a unit on that. Everything I just said, and he didn't score last week. Both of Rodgers' touchdowns went to Allen Lazard. So I think they probably try to get Garrett Wilson the ball in the red zone. But even if they don't, I still think he just has a great chance of scoring anyway. So yeah, I really like Garrett Wilson this week against the Titans. Next game that I'm going through is the Giants at Commanders. And if you watched last week, the Giants cost us a lot of money because they looked absolutely horrible. Malik Neighbors did save us cashing that. But yeah, Giants money line obviously was a terrible pick by me. And Daniel Jones is awful. So yeah, I will not be making the mistake of betting on Daniel Jones again. Hopefully we see Drew Lock soon, or even Tommy DeVito at this point, because I mean, Jesus, Daniel Jones looked horrible. Yeah. Anyway, the first play that I have for this one is Brian Robinson Jr. over 52 and a half rushing yards. I put 52.3 rushing yards, which is what the hell? 52.3 rushing yards. Yeah. Brian Robinson Jr. over 52 and a half rushing yards, minus 113, 1.2 units. And to me, this one is a pretty simple play. The Giants defense was awful last week, especially against the run. Jaden Daniels is only in his second game at quarterback, so I think they'll probably rely heavily on the run game. You know, don't let Jaden Daniels make mistakes, make it an easy game for him, rely on the rush. The Giants defense sucks. Eckler will probably steal some rushes from Robinson, but that's expected. But between the two of them, they could easily go for like over 150 yards. So Robinson to have 53 to me makes a whole lot of sense. The other one that I'm doing in this game is one that I did last week, and that is Malik Neighbors over 66 and a half receiving yards, also minus 113, also 1.2 units. Yes, as I said, Daniel Jones looked awful. Neighbors still hit his over with Daniel Jones looking awful. I think Daniel Jones looks better this week, mainly because the Commanders secondary looked absolutely horrible against the Buccaneers last week. So I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities there than he did in the game last Sunday. But there's also a chance that Daniel Jones isn't in the game the entire time. I think he's on a short leash already. I mean, they asked Dable multiple times this week if they were going to play Daniel Jones, and he said yes. But if the media is asking that question, then that means the quarterback's on a short leash. So if he does come out and just look absolutely awful in the first quarter, it's entirely possible that we see Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito in this game. And then there's even better chance that Neighbors hits this. But even if Daniel Jones does play the entire game, I still think Neighbors is probably going to be the guy in the passing game, and he should be able to hit this number again like he did last week. Okay, on to the next game, which for me is the most important game of the slate. None of the other ones matter, just this one. Buccaneers at Lions. I think we're going to win. I know I said I wasn't going to do lines, but I don't know. I really like this matchup for us. I do have a few in this one just because obviously I look at this game a little bit closer than I look at the other games. So I'm going to have more, and I actually have more bets than this in this game, but I'm only going to give out a few because I have so many already. So if you want even more that I'm not going to talk about, just shoot me a DM on Twitter and I'll give you the other ones. But anyway, the ones that I am going to talk about, Jahmyr Gibbs over 23 and a half receiving yards, minus 113, 1.2 units on that one. The Lions love using Gibbs in the passing game. He had 34 yards last week on 4 catches with 6 targets, and I expect more of the same in this one. I mean, he pretty much does that every week. He is kind of the receiving back to David Montgomery being the bull rush back, so it makes a lot of sense. And the Buccaneers gave up over 100 receiving yards to the Commanders running backs last week. So there's no reason to think that Jahmyr Gibbs can't break off a couple and easily get to like 40 or 50 in this game. So I love that play. It's one of my favorite ones of the week. The other one that I have for this one is Chris Godwin over 62 and a half receiving yards, minus 113. So 1.2 units on that one as well. Godwin was the leading receiver last week for the Buccaneers. He had 83 yards on 8 catches. And that's probably going to be a repeat this week for them. Our secondary isn't great. I think they looked decent on week 1, but there were a lot of mistakes. We're just really young in the secondary. So obviously we're going to have to kind of get to being, where we want to be there. But we do have Carlton Davis, who is an ex-Buccaneer, and he will probably be on Mike Evans most of the game with Terry and Arnold on Chris Godwin. So I don't expect Carlton Davis to shut down Mike Evans by any means, but I think he could have enough pressure to where Baker just goes more towards Godwin. And he seemed to do that last week anyway, especially on third down plays. So it's seeming kind of, and it looked like this at the end of last season too. It seems like Chris Godwin is kind of becoming the drive receiver, and then Mike Evans is the touchdown receiver. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen in this one. So I think Chris Godwin is going to get more targets or more receptions in the game. But then my last play for this one is Mike Evans, anytime touchdown. It's somehow still plus 120, so I'm putting a unit on that. Eventually, this will not be plus money, but every time it is, there's a good chance I'm going to take it because he scores a lot. And I absolutely think he's going to score against us in this one. Like I said, Chris Godwin did have the receptions last week. He had the yards last week. Mike Evans, though, had 2 touchdowns last week, which we also cashed on. If you watched last week, I believe it was like plus 750, plus 700. So great cash for us there. But like I said, our secondary isn't great, especially in the red zone. And Mike Evans can go up pretty much over anybody, especially our relatively small secondary, other than maybe Kirby Joseph. So yeah, I think there's a great chance for him to score here. And I'm also going to sprinkle on him to get 2+ touchdowns again this week at plus 800. I just think it's too good of an opportunity not to, and you might as well have a little bit of money on it. Next game that I'm going to talk about, Rams at Cardinals. And this is another one that we bet on and cashed on last week. So I'm going to bet it again this week, and I actually like it more this week than I did last week. That's Colby Parkinson over 3.5 receptions. It's plus 130. So I'm going to put 1 unit on that. Again, another one that I don't understand why this is plus money. Stafford still loves to pass the tight ends. I said this last week when I put this bet in, and it's still true this week. And on top of that, Puka Nacua is now out. So somebody's got to get his volume, and it's probably going to be spread out a good bit. But Colby Parkinson is absolutely going to be one of the guys that sees some more volume because of Puka being out. But even if he doesn't see more volume, this still cashed last week. So I think it cashes again. At plus money, it's a great bet. 2 more games that I'm going to talk about, and then we're going to get into the parlays, the fun stuff. Bengals at Chiefs. First one is Chase Brown over 10.5 receiving yards, minus 113, 1.2 units again. He was in a good bit of the passing game last week. He only had 12 yards, but he did have 3 receptions. And I think getting 3 receptions in a game that was just ugly for the Bengals is a good sign. But this week, I think he's going to probably be more active in the passing game because they're playing the Chiefs, who obviously have a really good defensive line. They have a good defense in general. The Bengals are probably going to be playing from behind. So on top of the design plays that will most likely go to him, which is probably going to be a couple, he'll also be used as the check down back a lot. And the Bengals seem to have liked him more than Zach Moss in the passing game. Zach Moss did have 2 receptions as well. But it seemed like Chase Brown was in the game a little bit more late in the game where they knew they were going to be passing it. So I think he gets at least 3 receptions again this week. And at only 10.5 receiving yards, he could cash this on 1 catch. So the number is just way too low here to not bet it, in my opinion. And then the other bet in this game is Isaiah Pacheco, anytime touchdown. It's minus 130, so I'm going to put 1.3 units on this. It is a little juiced, but the Bengals rush defense was horrible last week. And against the Patriots too, who aren't projected to be, one of the best running teams. So the Chiefs should obviously be able to run all over them. There's also a good chance that this is a blowout early. So Pacheco just gets kind of that garbage time stuff and scores there as well. Pacheco also scored last week in a game that actually, was really tight. So there's no reason to think that he couldn't score here. And I also like him to score twice as well. So I'm going to sprinkle him 2+ touchdowns as well. And the last play that I have for this slate, Steelers at Broncos. I'm going to go Steelers defense anytime touchdown at plus 550. I'm going to put half a unit on that one. This is basically betting on TJ Watt, and the Broncos looked bad last week. So, there's no reason to think if they have Bo Nix do exactly what he did last week, which to me was crazy, and I don't know if they do. But if they have him do what he did last week, there is a very good chance that the Steelers have multiple turnovers, and one of them could be returned for a touchdown. So obviously, this is a high odds play, which is why you're only putting half a unit on it. But I think it's a really good bet for getting 5.5 to 1 odds. So that is my bets for this slate. I did not do any kicker props in this one. I typically only do those in primetime games. So that's probably where you'll see those mostly. But I will probably sprinkle some in here and there where I like them. But yeah, kicker props are always fun. I had one on the game last night and it did not hit because the Dolphins looked horrible. So that wasn't fun. Anyway, let me get into my parlays. I have 4 parlays to give out this time. 2 touchdown parlays, one that I really like, and then one that's just like more fun. And then a 2 touchdown parlay, just like last week, and a just regular parlay player props for the slate. So getting right into it. The first touchdown parlay, the odds are 29-12. I'm going to put half a unit on that. 4 guys: Isaiah Pacheco, who I've already talked about, Mike Evans, who I've already talked about, Jonathan Taylor, who I've already talked about, and Isaiah Likely, who I've already talked about. These are probably my 4 favorite guys to score in this slate. I think they all have incredible chances of scoring. So why not throw them together for a nice almost 30 to 1 touchdown odds? Isaiah Pacheco, Mike Evans, Jonathan Taylor, Isaiah Likely. Love this play. The other touchdown parlay that I have is a little bit, I don't know the word, tougher, I guess, but it is still guys that I really like. So I wanted to do this one as well, with the chance of getting the better odds, because this one is plus 69.18. So you're getting almost 70 to 1 odds here. I'm going to put a quarter unit on this one because I just don't trust this one quite as much as the other one. But again, just 4 guys. This one is Garrett Wilson, Brian Robinson, Justice Hill, and Sam Laporta. Now, Garrett Wilson, Brian Robinson, I've already talked about. I talked about Justice Hill. Like I said earlier, I like his receiving yards, and he could score on like a wheel route or a screen or something like that in the passing game, like I talked about. But this game could also be a blowout, and he gets a lot of looks late in the game, and he could score in garbage time. And his odds by itself are 4 to 1. So great parlay leg on that one. And then Laporta, he didn't do a ton last week. He had about 50 receiving yards, nothing really in the red zone. I think that changes this week. I think we really try to get Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta both more involved this week than we did last week. And Laporta is just such a force in the red zone that I think he has a great chance of scoring. The 2 touchdown parlay is one that, again, I really like this 2 touchdown parlay. For the crazy odds that it is, I actually think it has a legit chance here. 3 legs, 2 touchdown parlay. The odds are plus 45,000, which is just nuts to me, because the 2 guys are Mike Evans, Jonathan Taylor, and Isaiah Pacheco. And I've already talked about all 3 of them. I think all 3 of them have great chances of scoring twice. You can also round robin this. Red robin. You can red robin this and get a burger. You can also round robin this for just 2 of them hitting, and you'll get great odds there too. But I really like all 3. I think all 3 really have a legit shot at scoring twice. And then last is my parlay for this weekend. It is a 5-leg parlay. The odds are plus 1,000, so I'm going to put half a unit on this one as well. And it is Jahmyr Gibbs over 23.5 receiving yards, Justice Hill over 12.5 receiving yards, Chris Godwin 50 plus receiving yards, Alvin Kamara 25 plus receiving yards, and Garrett Wilson 50 plus receiving yards. Those 5 plus 1,000, half a unit. And that is it for my plays for this week, I will be doing the Sunday night and Monday night show tomorrow morning before the college games start. So hop in with me on that one and check out the Sunday night and Monday night plays. I'll have first touchdowns on that one, touchdowns, player props, just like always. Give this video a like and make sure you subscribe for me. If you're not, tell your friends to subscribe. Tell your mom to subscribe. I don't care. Just get subscribers. I need them. And I'll see y'all on the next one.